Gunpowder burned his nostrils. He vowed none would see dawn. Colt felt each heartbeat thunder in his ears as he pressed his back to the bullet-pocked barn door. Splinters bit into his skin. Smoke and dust turned the air to grit on his tongue. Across the yard, the widow Ada stood defiant in the hellish orange glow of burning hay. Her eyes reflected fire and fury, unyielding. A dozen gunmen circled like wolves in the darkness, closing in. Colt's revolver clicked empty. He growled a promise through clenched teeth that echoed into the night. He had nothing left to lose. Midnight blanketed the widow's ranch. Colt hunkered in the cabin's dim front room, counting bullets by lamplight. Only 6 rounds left between them. Every shot had to count. The rancid smell of kerosene from the lantern mixed with the cold sweat on his palms. A loose shutter banged in the rising wind, and he flinched at the sound, jaw clenched. It was only the wind, this time. Outside on the porch, old Silas peered into darkness with a rifle in hand. Ada quietly slid a second pistol toward Colt across the table. He'd sworn off killing, but her land and life were on the line tonight. Through the cracked window, torchlight flickered in the distance. 12 riders were out there, eager to collect on a cruel bet. Would they all attack at once or pick them off slowly? Colt wiped his brow, stealing a glance at Ada's determined face. She gave a firm nod. She was ready to stand her ground. A sudden crunch of boots on gravel snapped their eyes to the door. The voices of men emerged from the dark yard, jeering. One called out in a mocking drawl, "Missus, Ada, come on out now, unless y'all want your home burned." Colt's heart kicked against his ribs. Silas cocked his rifle with a metallic click. Sweat dripped down Colt's neck as he blew out the lamp. There was no backing down. A heavy boot slammed against the door once, twice. Wood began to crack. Colt raised his revolver at the entrance. The door burst inward amid flying splinters. "Get down now!" he shouted. Gunfire erupted in a flash and thunder of light. Outside, an attacker screamed as Silas's rifle blasted the night. Colt peered through the splintered doorway and saw a dark figure tumble off the porch, clutching his shoulder. The metallic tang of gun smoke filled Colt's nose. Muzzle flashes flared from behind the water trough and woodpile as the remaining ranchers opened fire on the house. Lead whistled through shattered windows, thudding into walls. Ada coughed at the acrid smell of black powder and plaster as she crouched low. Glass exploded inches from her, drawing a yelp. Colt's ears rang from the gunshots. He crawled to Ada's side, heart pounding. "You all right?" he rasped. She nodded, eyes watering from smoke, but still fierce. A crash sounded from the rear of the cabin, someone trying to breach the back door. Colt snapped up his spare pistol and crept toward the noise. A boot heel cracked the flimsy kitchen door off its hinge. In the darkness, a silhouetted man rushed in. Colt fired without hesitation. The intruder collapsed with a grunt, knocking over a shelf of tin plates. For an instant, silence, apart from Colt's ragged breathing. 1 heartbeat, 2. The crunch of retreating footsteps signaled the rest had pulled back for now. It wasn't even 1 o'clock yet. Dawn was still a lifetime away. "You're gonna pay for that," a voice shouted from the darkness outside, dripping with rage. Colt recognized the speaker, Gideon Slade, the ruthless ranch boss leading this siege. Gideon's brother must have been one of the men Colt just shot. Colt's stomach knotted at the realization. His shout came cold and bitter. "You brought this on yourself, Slade." In reply, Gideon just laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Then a glass bottle with a burning rag sailed through the window, smashing in flame across the floor. Fire caught the drapes and wooden floorboards. Ada gasped as heat roared to life. Colt's blood ran cold. They were really going to burn them alive. Starting now. Flames roared through the cabin rafters, turning night into a wild dance of light and shadow. Smoke billowed out the door as Colt guided Ada low along the wall. The heat was blistering, the air thick with choking smoke and burning kerosene. A timber groaned overhead. Fire was chewing through the cabin. "We have to move now," Colt hissed, wiping soot from his stinging eyes. Through the doorway, he spotted silhouettes of men circling to cut off their escape. They'd be sitting ducks if they ran into open ground. Colt's gaze snagged on a half-empty powder keg near the door, its lid off and sparks drifting dangerously close. An idea flashed. "Silas! The keg!" Colt shouted hoarsely. Silas understood at once. Silas aimed and fired at the barrel. A half-second of silence, then a deafening boom. The front of the cabin erupted in a fireball, blowing the door off its hinges. The blast knocked several attackers flat amid startled cries. For an instant, nothing but ringing in Colt's ears and a cloud of dust. Their desperate ploy paid off. When the smoke cleared, 2 of Gideon's men lay still, and the rest scrambled in confusion. "Go! Go!" Silas barked, coughing. Colt pulled Ada up from cover, and they dashed out the blown-open doorway. Embers swirled in the night air. Colt kept a firm grip on Ada's arm as they sprinted toward the barn ahead. A few recovering gunmen shouted and fired wildly. Bullets whizzed past. He shoved Ada forward just as a shot cracked. Silas, a few steps behind, lurched with a grunt and fell to his knees. Colt spun back. "Silas!" he cried. The old man clutched his gut, face ashen. A shot whined past. Colt hooked an arm under Silas's shoulder, half dragging him the last stretch into the barn. Ada took Silas's other arm, tears cutting through the soot on her cheeks. Inside the barn, they collapsed behind a stack of hay bales as gunshots peppered the walls outside. Silas wheezed, eyes shut tight against pain. Colt's heart hammered. Silas was hit bad. Could he even hold on until sunrise? In the dusty gloom of the barn, Ada knelt beside Silas, pressing a blanket to his wound. Lantern light flickered over blood on his shirt. Silas's breath came in shallow, rattling pulls. Outside, the raiders shouted curses, furious but momentarily cautious after the explosion. Each passing minute felt like an eternity. 4 more hours till dawn, too long to wait with a dying man. Colt clenched his jaw so hard it ached. "Hold on, old-timer," he murmured, voice breaking. Silas's eyes fluttered open at the sound. Pride and fear shone in his fading eyes. "Colt," he wheezed, barely a whisper. Ada cradled the mentor's head, tears in her eyes. Suddenly, the old man gripped Colt's sleeve with surprising strength. "Don't you stray now, son," Silas gasped. "Promise me, stay who you are. Protect her." His glance shifted toward Ada. Colt swallowed hard. Before he could answer, Silas's hand went limp. The old mentor exhaled one last ragged breath and went still. Ada choked back a sob. Colt lowered Silas's hand gently to his chest, a storm of grief and fury brewing behind his eyes. Outside, Gideon Slade's voice boomed, "Dawn's coming, and you ain't lasting that long. Hear me, boy. I'll see you dead before sunrise." His taunts echoed through the night. Colt rose slowly, shoulders squared in the lantern glow. Ada grabbed his arm. "Colt, what are you going to do?" she whispered, already dreading the answer. Colt's face was like chiseled stone. "Finish this," he said quietly. He slid the revolver from Silas's holster and checked the cylinder, fully loaded. Ada's eyes widened as she realized his intent. "You can't take them alone," she pleaded. "Silas wouldn't want—" Colt gently touched her cheek, wiping away a tear with his thumb. "Stay here. Keep cover," he said. His tone was calm, cold. Ada opened her mouth to argue, but the look in Colt's eyes stopped her. She saw the outlaw he once was stirring back to life. He stepped away into the barn's open doorway, revolver in one hand and Silas's rifle in the other. The faintest light of pre-dawn painted the sky a deep purple. Gideon's men were regrouping beyond the barnyard, lanterns bobbing in the dark as they advanced. Colt felt a strange quiet settle over him. Grief had turned to a steely resolve. He whispered under his breath to the fallen mentor, "I'm sorry." Then, with a chilling calm, Colt stepped out into the night alone, guns raised. Colt darted behind a water trough as gunfire erupted at his sudden appearance. Bullets splintered wood and kicked up mud at his heels. The sharp tang of gunpowder and cold dawn air filled his lungs. He counted at least 6, maybe more, shooters fanning out across the yard. In the dim pre-dawn light, their muzzle flashes betrayed their positions. He had to even the odds fast. Sunrise was less than an hour away, and they seemed determined to finish this before daylight. A rifle cracked from the hayloft of the barn. One of the ranchers had climbed up for a better shot. The round punched through the trough inches from Colt's face, spraying him with dirty water. Colt wiped his eyes, ears ringing from the close call. He was low on revolver ammo. He had to make every shot count. Peeking out, he saw the glint of a lantern on the shooter in the loft. Colt exhaled, raised Silas's rifle, and squeezed the trigger. The figure in the loft toppled with a yell, thudding to the barn floor. At that, one of the others let out a curse. "He got Lee." Using the distraction, Colt rolled out and fired twice with his 6-gun at the silhouettes by the fence. One man cried out and dropped. The rest opened up in a fury. Colt ducked behind an old wagon as slugs thudded into its frame. The acrid smell of burning oil from a shattered lantern mixed with the morning dew. Gideon's booming voice rose above the chaos, livid. "That all you got? Come on out and die, you coward!" Colt's heart thundered, but his resolve held firm. He reloaded his Colt revolver with trembling fingers, steeling himself. He had been a coward once in his outlaw past, running instead of standing. Not today. Colt sucked in a breath, then burst from cover, guns blazing. His sudden charge caught 2 of Gideon's men off guard. One fell, clutching his chest. Another stumbled back with a wild scream as Colt's bullet grazed his arm. A third rushed at Colt from the side, a gleaming knife in hand. Colt's empty rifle met the attacker's skull with a sickening crack, dropping him cold. But Gideon was waiting. The brute of a man barreled into Colt like an enraged bull, sending them both crashing to the ground. Colt's revolver jarred from his grip. Gideon was on him in a heartbeat, fists flying. Pain exploded across Colt's jaw as Gideon's punch landed like a hammer. The world spun, the taste of blood filling Colt's mouth. Gideon hoisted him partly up by the collar and snarled through broken teeth, "Shoulda stayed dead, boy." With a snarl of his own, Colt drove his boot into Gideon's knee. The big man howled, grip loosening just enough. Colt wrenched free, scooping a fallen revolver from the dirt. Gideon lunged, eyes wild, too late. Thunder cracked as Colt fired once, twice. Gideon's body jerked, momentum carrying him forward one more step before he collapsed to his knees. He stared at Colt in dumb surprise as a red stain spread across his shirt. Dawn's first light broke over the ridge, painting the sky in fiery gold as the ruthless ranch boss toppled face first into the dust. Chest heaving, Colt staggered up, bruised and bleeding. 11 of the 12 lay silent or moaning in the half-light, none left standing but him. He retrieved his own revolver, ears still ringing. A sudden cry cut through the air, raw and desperate. "Colt, look out!" Ada's voice. Colt spun toward the barn, heart seizing in his chest. Emerging from behind the barn, a gun pressed to her temple, was the last of Gideon's crew. A lean, hollow-eyed man dragging Ada as a human shield. In the new daylight, Colt recognized the man's face and felt the blood drain from his own. It was Jesse Hale, a ghost from his past he'd hoped to never see again. Jesse's voice was ice. "Drop the iron, Colt, or the lady dies. Did you miss me, brother?" Sunrise cast long shadows across the ravaged barnyard. Colt's chest heaved as he kept his revolver trained on Jesse. Ada's eyes were wide with fear, but her jaw was set in defiance even with the gun to her head. Colt's mind raced. He stood maybe 10 paces away, too far to risk a shot while Jesse used her as cover. A golden beam of morning light glinted off the barn's weather vane, catching Jesse's eye for the briefest moment. Ada seized the chance. She drove her elbow back into Jesse's ribs with all her might. Jesse grunted in surprise and his aim faltered. In that split second, Colt fired. The gunshot cracked the dawn. Jesse's pistol flew from his hand, clattering to the dirt, and Ada tore free of his loosened grasp. Jesse staggered backward, collapsing against the barn wall with a wail, clutching a bleeding gash across his shooting arm. Colt rushed forward and pulled Ada behind him, shielding her. His own gun hovered inches from Jesse's heart as the wounded man slid to the ground. Breathing hard, Colt met Jesse's anguished gaze. Recognition and rage burned there. Blood from Jesse's arm dripped onto the barn's planks. "Go on," Jesse snarled, baring his teeth. "Finish it. That's what you do, ain't it? You finish off your brothers." Colt's finger trembled on the trigger. Memories flooded back. The night he rode off and left Jesse's gang to be caught. The blood on his hands from all he'd done since. For an instant, the hate in Jesse's eyes was mirrored in Colt's own. Ada placed a gentle hand on Colt's shoulder. "It's over," she said softly. Colt's jaw tightened. Silas's final plea echoed in his ears. "Stay who you are." With a ragged sigh, he lowered the revolver. He would not become a murderer in cold blood. Jesse let out a bitter laugh that turned into a cough. The lean man slumped, defeated and alive, amid the dust and dawn. Ada stepped forward, bruised but unbroken, and wrapped her arms around Colt. He sagged against her, exhaustion crashing down. In the fresh morning light, with Jesse's hateful glare boring into his back, Colt realized the long night was finally over. Yet the past still cast its shadow. Could mercy and a new morning truly wash away the blood spilled in the dark? Morning light washed over the smoking ruins of the ranch house. Ada leaned into Colt's side as they stood in the yard, watching a pair of hawks wheel across the brightening sky. The acrid scent of charred wood lingered in the cool air. Behind them, Jesse Hale sat bound against a fence post, glowering at the ground in silence. The last echoes of gunfire had faded, leaving an eerie calm. Colt's arm tightened around Ada. Exhaustion lined his face, but he felt her warmth and strength steady him. She had lost her home and so much more, yet she remained unbowed. The widow's will had proven unbreakable. Colt gently laid Silas's hat atop a makeshift cross of wood set in the dirt, a humble marker for their fallen friend. Ada squeezed his hand. Some losses would linger like ghosts on the land. As the sun climbed, Colt knew the main threat had passed. Ada was safe. Still, uncertainty tugged at his mind. The law would come for Jesse soon, but what of Colt's own sins still unatoned? He glanced to the horizon where the last stars were vanishing. A new day beckoned with its promise of redemption, or revenge, yet unresolved. Ada looked up at him, eyes full of gratitude and unanswered questions about what came next. Colt managed a faint smile and tipped his hat forward, shadowing his weary eyes. For now, the danger was gone, and dawn had arrived. But some dawns only mark the end of one battle and the beginning of another. Never surrender your will. Even the darkest night yields to the dawn. Hard cut to end screen.